وقل رب زدني علما.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Is any of our Qurra available to recite Hadith number 12? Sheikh Idris or Muftī Yusuf or anyone else? Mulana Idris is here. Inshallah, you can start to recite.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وبه قال حدثنا عبد الله بن صالح قال حدثني الليث قال حدثني خالد بن يزيد عن سعيد بن أبي هلال عن أبي حازم عن أبي مرة مولى عقيل أن أبا هريرة رضي الله عنه كان يستخلفه مروان وكان يكون بذي الحليفة وكانت أمه في بيت وهو في آخر، فإذا أراد أن يخرج وقف على بابها فقال: السلام عليك يا أمتاه ورحمة الله وبركاته، فتقول: وعليك السلام يا بني ورحمة الله وبركاته، فيقول: رحمك الله كما ربيتني صغيرا، فتقول: رحمك الله كما بررتني كبيرا، ثم إذا أراد أن يدخل صنع مثله.
جزاك الله خير. بارك الله فيك. So Abu Murrah, he transmits and he relates that Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, Marwan would appoint him as the governor of Medina Munawwara. So وَكَانَ يَكُونُ بِذُو الْحُلَيْفَةِ, before this he would be in Dhul Hulayfa, but then Marwan would appoint him when Marwan would go out. So the point here is to show that on the one hand he had the great status of being a Sahabi. On the other hand, he even had the worldly status of being appointed as the governor. So both ways he holds a very exalted and a very high position. Whether it's from an Islamic perspective, he's the one who's quoting a hadith, he's the main teacher of the time, he's respected, he's a Sahabi. On the other hand, he's a governor, so he holds this authority. Yet, look at the humility that he would show to his mother despite having such an exalted position. وَكَانَتْ أُمُّهُ فِي بَيْتٍ وَهُوَ فِي آخَرٍ. His mother would be in one house, he would be in another house. They would be living close to one another like neighbors. When he wanted to go out, he would go to the house, or he would stand at the door of his mother and he would call out, he would make salam with her, and he would say, Assalamu alayka ya ummatah wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So this word ummatah, we'll explain it now, but with so much love, so much affection, he would call to his mother. He would make sure, despite holding these senior positions, despite being, like in our context, to say the greatest muhaddith of the time, the greatest sheikh al-hadith of his era, being a sahabi and then also being a governor, his mother would respond to him and said, Wa alayka salam, ya bunayya wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just look between mother and son, how much love, how much affection they have. They addressing each other with this kind of words. Then he would show his gratitude to his mother, and he would make dua for his mother. Rahimakillah kama rabbaytini saghira. So rahimakillah, he would make dua. May Allah Ta'ala have mercy on you, like how you brought me up when I was a small child. And she would say, rahimakallah, may Allah have mercy on you, like how you are so obedient to me once you grow up. So this is what he would do when he wanted to leave. And then when he would come back home, they would again repeat the same kind of conversation where he's making salam to his mother. They are both expressing their gratitude. They are both exchanging du'as. So Alama Marwazi, he narrated this in his book Al-Bir was-Sila. Ibn Abi Dunya narrated it in his Makarim al-Akhlaq, and Ibn Wahab narrated it. The sanad is authentic. In Ad-Durr al-Munaddad, it is mentioned, وَإِسْنَادُ الْحَدِيث صَحِيحٌ وَرِجَالُهُ ثِقَاتٌ, that the chain of transmission is authentic. All the narrators are reliable. وَلَا يَضُرُّ مَا قِيلَ مِنْ اخْتِلَاطِ سَعِيدِ ibn Abi Hilal. That where it is said that Sa'id ibn Abi Hilal lost his memory, that will not harm the authenticity of this particular narration. So Marwan would appoint Abu Huraira as his representative of Medina Munawwara when he would embark on a journey. For example, when he would go for Hajj, In Jami' al-Tirmidhi, Imam Tirmidhi rahmallah quotes with his sanad to Ubaidullah ibn Abi Rafi', who was the Mawla of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he mentioned استخلف مروان أبا هريرة على المدينة وخرج إلى مكة, that Marwan, he went to he left for Mecca, so he appointed Abu Hurairah radiyallahu an as the governor of Medina. So Abu Hurairah radiallahu anh used to be the governor. He would be ruling Medina Munawwara when Marwan would go out. Now here the word ummatah, so you can see it has that ta and the alif. He could have said ya ummah, or he could have said ya ummi. So the words, the ta and the alif, Malana Faydullah Jailani, he explained that ya ummata nida, that this is a form of address, that he's addressing his mother. والتا والألف كلاهما عوض عن ياء المتكلم. The ta and it alif, two letters, they serve as a substitute of the ya for the mutakallim. That means it's actually coming in the meaning of ya ummi, oh my mother. But instead of putting the ya to say my mother, you're putting the ta and the alif. وقد جمع بين العوضين. So two substitutes are brought to replace one letter. That changing that ya from ya ummi and changing it with two letters, a ta and an alif. He says that it is permissible. And even though if you wanted to just use one, if you wanted to say Ya Ummah, that too would have been fine. So this is the one way of interpreting the word ummata. And the second way, and this is the more appropriate meaning, أو التاء للتفخيم لزيادتهما في أبت أيضا والها للسكتة. The ta is brought for emphasis and exaltation. So he's trying to say, oh my beloved mother, oh my respected mother. So that is why he's saying Ya Ummata. And just like how you say Ya Abati, so you can see it's a ta to say, oh my respected father. So that is why the ta is brought. And the ha at the end is for just for a pause, so as a sakta. So this narration comes ahead as well. You can read the next narration, inshallah.
به قال حدثنا أبو نعيم قال حدثنا سفيان عن عطاء بن السائب عن أبيه عن عبد الله بن عمرو قال جاء رجل إلى النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يبايعه على الحجرة وترك أبويه يبكيان فقال ارجع إليهما وأضحكهما كما أبكيتهما.
Jazakallah khairan. So Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu, he relates that a person came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and wanted to pledge with him that he will undertake hijrah, he will migrate. But his mother, his parents were crying. They were not happy about this. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, "Irji' ilayhima," that first go to them, وَأَضْحِكْهُمَا كَمَا أَبْكَيْتَهُمَا. Make them smile, make them happy like how you have made them sad. So this particular narration, it's transmitted by Ulama Abdul Razak, who spoke about him, Imam Humaydi, he's the teacher of Imam Bukhari rahmallah. Likewise, Imam Ahmad rahmallah, in his Musnad, he quoted it about 4 times. Imam Nasai rahmallah also quoted it. Imam Abu Dawud also quoted it. Imam Ibn Majah also quoted it. Ibn Hibban also quoted it. Imam Hakim also quoted it. So it's an authentic narration. In his Mustadrak, after quoting it, Imam Hakim rahmallah said, هذا حديث صحيح الإسناد ولم يخرجاه. That it is, the sanad is authentic, although Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim have not transmitted it. Alama Dhahabi rahmallah concurred with him, and he also said that it is an authentic narration. So here you can see that the person wanted to pledge for something which is so meritorious, to make hijrah at that time. Yet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is still putting emphasis upon him that he must get the pleasure of his parents. He must make his parents happy. So when a person wants to make hijrah, when a person wants to go in jihad, and there I say, when a person wants to go in jamaat, in tabligh also, he can only go if his parents permit him. So unfortunately, in today's time, so many people, they go and they that that they don't have any rights to their parents, that people are passing away without iman, so we must go give dawah to the Muslims because people are dying without iman, and we have to go for 4 months in Jamaat, or we have to go for our 3 days every month. Likewise, people also, they don't fulfill the rights of their families and their wives, and then they go in Jamaat. That's another whole topic to speak about. And by the way, I also go regularly in Jamaat, and I also, alhamdulillah, have been for 1 year. So I'm not criticizing the work of Tabligh. I'm just mentioning the actions of some of those who go in Jamaat. Here you can see that the person wanted to actually make hijrah in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. At that time, hijrah was close to being compulsory, depending at which time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam it was. Yet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling him that he can only go if his parents are happy with him. So like that also, there's other narrations which mentions about jihad. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned that فَفِيهِمَا فَجَاهِدْ, that make jihad by going into the khidmah of your parents. And that is how this narration also is quoted. So Ulama ibn Abdul Barr rahimahullah said, لا خلاف علمته أن الرجل لا يجوز له الغزو ووالداه كارهان أو أحدهما, that I am not aware of any disagreement. Like literally all scholars are unanimous that it is not permissible for a person to go on a military expedition. So you can see, for a person to go in jihad, if his parents are opposed to it, or even if one of them is not happy with him. So can you imagine going in jihad? لأن الخلاف لهما في أداء الفرائض عقوق وهو من الكبائر ومن الغزو ما قلت. Yet, so he's saying that yes, لأن الخلاف لهما في أداء الفرائض عقوق وهو من الكبائر ومن الغزو ما قلت. So to go in jihad without their permission, this here is considered as uquq. So disobedience to them in fulfilling obligatory duties is considered as a major sin, and the same applies to ghazw. Allama Khattabi rahimahullah, he mentioned in Ma'alim al-Sunan, so his commentary of Sunan Abi Dawud, that al-jihad إذا كان الخارج فيه متطوعا فإن ذلك لا يجوز. That if a person is going on a voluntary voluntary jihad, so he's going as a volunteer, it's not obligatory upon him, then it will not be permissible except if his parents give him permission. فإن ذلك لا يجوز إلا بإذن الوالدين. فأما إذا تعين عليه فرض الجهاد فلا حاجة به إلى إذنهما. Yes, if jihad is compulsory upon him. Now you have the compulsion of jihad on the one side, and you have the compulsion of serving one's parents on the other side, then it will be necessary for him to go in jihad, even though his parents are not happy. So like the example for it is that in Gaza, that say for example in Gaza there was a person whose parents told him that you should not go and fight. Then in that instance, it was not obligatory, it was not mandatory, it was not compulsory upon him to listen to his parents. Rather, he would have looked at the broader picture and what is in the bigger interest of the Muslim Ummah, and he would have then gone and fought in jihad. But if a person is living in any other place of the world, then jihad is not compulsory. And since jihad is not compulsory, he cannot go if now he thinks that let me fly to one of these countries and I can give my life in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if his parents I have to tell him no, he cannot go, then he cannot go. So if it's compulsory upon him, then he does not have to listen to them. وَإِن مَنَعَاهُ مِنَ الْخُرُوجِ عَصَاهُمَا وَخَرَجَ فِي الْجِهَادِ. If jihad is compulsory, then it's permissible for him to be disobedient to them. But then he explains, وَهَذَا إِذَا كَانَ مُسْلِمِينَ, that this law of jihad only applies if a person's parents are Muslims. فإن كان كافرين فلا سبيل لهما إلى منعه من الجهاد فرضا كان أو نفلا. That if a person's parents are non-Muslims, then they have no authority in preventing him from going in jihad, whether it's a farad jihad or whether it is a nafal jihad. So then he can go in jihad. So although this particular narration is mentioning about this person here, that he wanted to go, he wanted to migrate, but there are other narrations also which mentions about jihad. So you can see that a person, for any journey he wants to take, whether it's good, he will have to do it with the permission of his parents. Imam Ghazali rahmallah, he said, أكثر العلماء على أن طاعة الأبوين واجبة في الشبهات. Majority of the scholars, they hold the opinion that obeying one's parents is obligatory even in matters of doubt. وإن لم تجب في الحرام المحض, even though it is not obligatory in cases of pure haram. حتى إذا كان, so he mentions that if they want that the person must eat with them, then فَعَلَيْكَ أَن تَأْكُلَ مَعَهُمَا, then it is compulsory upon you that you must eat with them. So can you see? So then he says, وَكَذَلِكَ لَيْسَ لَكَ أَن تُسَافِرْ فِي مُبَاحٍ أَوْ نَافِلَةٍ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِمَا. Similarly, it's not permissible for anyone to travel for a permissible or even a voluntary act except with their permission. So you want to go for Umrah. If you want to go for Umrah and your parents say no, then it is no. You cannot then go for Umrah. And then Imam Ghazali rahmallah goes to the extent of saying that even if it is for Hajj, because Hajj is wal-mubadara ila al-Hajj alladhi huwa fard al-Islam naflun, that if you are healthy and if you are young, then currently, also although Hajj is compulsory upon you, but doing the Hajj in this specific year, it's not compulsory. Doing the Hajj in this, so the Hajj in general is compulsory upon you, but doing it right now in this year, that's not compulsory upon you. So if you want to go, in for Hajj, and your parents say no, don't go this year, or go after a few years, and you are young and you are healthy, and outwardly it seems like you will still have life, and you could make it in the future, then it is necessary for you to obey them. وَالْخُرُوجُ لِطَلَبِ الْعِلْمِ نَفْلٌ. Then even if you have to go for voluntary seeking of knowledge, so this was asked on the group as well, إِلَّا إِذَا كُنْتَ تَطْلُبُ عِلْمَ الْفَرْضِ مِنَ الصَّلَاةِ وَالصَّوْمِ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ فِي بَلَدِكَ مَنْ يُعَلِّمُكَ. Yes, the exclusion for seeking knowledge is that if you have to seek the basics, so in your locality, there is no one to teach it to you. Maybe a person just accepted Islam. وذلك كما يسلم ابتداء في بلد ليس فيها من يعلمه شرع الإسلام. That a person accepted Islam in a locality, and in that locality there is no one to teach him the laws of Islam. So how to perform salah, fiqh, the basic laws of fiqh. So then if his parents tell him that no, you can't travel for seeking knowledge, then it's still permissible for him to travel to seek knowledge, because he needs to learn the basics. So maybe say if you are living in a place where, but now this year was all before online learning, etc. So say if you are living in a place where the people of that particular locality have the wrong aqidah. Now, having correct aqidah is fard, it's necessary. So if you're in a place where everyone holds the wrong aqidah, so you want to travel so that you can learn the correct aqidah, then it is fine. Likewise, to learn tajweed. Now, to learn how to pronounce the Arabic letters, the makharij, to learn the laws of tajweed, وَالْأَخْذُ بِالتَّجْوِيدِ حَتْمٌ لَازِمٌ مَنْ لَمْ يُجَوِّدِ الْقُرْآنِ فَهُوَ آثِمٌ. So a person who does not recite with tajweed, then he's a sana, and maybe although it's only the fourth or fifth tarawih, wherever you are, depending on when your moon was sighted, but probably by now you already must have got a question that the person recited like this and it didn't recite like that. So what is the status of the salah? So then it is permissible in those instances to travel. But yes, now if it's for higher Islamic studies, then you should see now whether your parents need your services or whether they don't need your services, and on what basis are they telling you not to go and study. So Alama ibn Abil Izz, he explained now, like a parent, they also have the kind of their feelings, and a son, a child needs to consider that So he said, وَقَدْ حُرِّمَ عَلَى الْوَلَدِ الْجِهَادِ بِغَيْرِ إِذْنِهِمَا لِمَا يَشُقُّ عَلَيْهِمَا مِنْ تَوَقُّعِ قَتْلِهِ وَقَطْعِ عَضْوٍ مِنْ أَعْضَائِهِ وَلِشِدَّةِ تَفَجُّعِهِمَا عَلَى ذَلِكَ. So can you see he's explaining it that this a child needs to take into consideration the emotions of his parents. He needs to consider the mental health of his parents. If he's just going to go in jihad, then he's in a nafil jihad, his parents are going to go undergo hardship. They might have sleepless nights because they're going to wonder, now, will my son return back alive or not? And what's going to happen to him? Even if he does return back alive, what if they shoot him in the eye, then he loses his eyesight? What if they shoot him in his hand and then he no more has that particular limb? So أو قطع عضو من أعضائه ولشدة تفجعهما على ذلك. So can you see he's mentioning that we need to basically, from what he's saying, that we need to take into consideration the feelings of your parents. You cannot just ignore it and look at no people. We need to go and raise i'la'u kalimatillah. We need to go and fight for the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we'll be with them in Jannah. No, you need to take into consideration their feelings in this world again. And by the way, Ibn Abil Izz is like one of the main scholars for the Salafis, and yet he is the one who is mentioning this. He mentions it in Qawa'id al-Ahkam fi Masalih al-Anam in volume 1 on page 24. And then he says, وَقَدْ أُلْحِقَ بِذَلِكَ كُلُّ سَفَرٍ يَخَافَانِ فِيهِ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ أَوْ عَلَى عَضْوٍ مِّنْ أَعْضَائِهِ. The same ruling applies to any journey in which the parents will fear for his safety, or they will fear for his body harm. So like, for example, now, here South Africa, it's very dangerous. Now, maybe if a person, he wants to go for Jamaat, maybe in one of the places which is known that there's no security there. Now you can't say no, Jamaat is all about tawakkul and we're going to learn tawakkul and Allah Ta'ala is going to look after us. No, you have to take into consideration the feelings of your parents as well. So like for those who are in South Africa, they will understand. Like you say, you're going for Jamaat to Hillbrow, for example. So then our parents will become like a place which is infested with lots of foreigners and drug dealers and lots of gangsters and things like that. No, you have to take into consideration the feelings of your parents as well, and they have a right in prohibiting you based on their feelings, and it is compulsory upon you to respect them and to obey them based on their feelings. So inshallah, you can continue at the next narration. Now there's so many questions here. But then from that link, I only get 4 or 5 questions. But there's so many questions being asked here, and you can see how slow we're going. So inshallah, try to ask your questions on that link. Inshallah, you can read the next narration.
وبه قال حدثنا عبد الرحمن بن شيبة قال أخبرنا ابن أبي الفديك قال حدثني موسى عن أبي حازم أن أبا مرة مولى أم هاني بنت أبي طالب أخبره أنه ركب مع أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه إلى أرضه بالعقيق، فإذا دخل أرضه صاح على صوته: عليك السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته يا أمتاه. تقول: وعليك السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. يقول: رحمك الله كما ربيتني صغيرا. فتقول: وأنت يا بني فجزاك الله خيرا ورضي عنك كما بررتني كبيرا. قال موسى: كان اسم أبي هريرة عبد الله بن عبد.
Jazakallah khairan. So in this narration, Abu Murrah, he mentions that he was once, so here he's mentioning what he witnessed. He's mentioning an experience of his. And this shows that it's a different incident compared to what we just read 2 narrations back. So this was a common practice of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu. So here he's mentioning that he went once he was accompanying Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu to his land, which was in Aqiq. And when he came to his house, on the top of his voice. Now, bear in mind that here there's another person with him. So he's the governor also, and he's also such an esteemed Sahabi, a respectable person in the community, a very high status, yet he's on the top of his voice, he says it. So he's not embarrassed that, Allah Ta'ala forgive us today. Sometimes you'll get uh, some children, especially when the parents are the ones who migrated from a third world country into a Western country, then the child, now he's born in that Western country and now he knows English and he considers himself to be a bit more muhaddab and he considers himself to be a bit more educated, then he become embarrassed to even introduce his father, isn't it? So you get people like that. But here you can see that we should never be of this, that our parents will always be above us. So he was not embarrassed. At the top of his voice, he would say, Alayki salam. Now, this is how the greeting is written and typed in most manuscripts. It's written like this, and in many of the printed editions, it's also typed like this here, alayki salam, but he's initiating the salam. Now, when we want to initiate salam, how do we initiate salam? We initiate salam by saying assalamu alaikum, isn't it? That is how we initiate the salam. But how is he initiating the salam here? He's first putting the word alaik and then putting the assalam. The editor writes in the footnotes that only in 2 of the manuscripts that he was using, it was typed as assalam alaik. But there also, it's in a singular. So regarding the ruling of making salam in this manner, do you have to say assalamu alaikum, or can you change the order around? Can you say alaikis salam? Can you put it in singular? So Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he mentioned in his Kitab al-Adhkar that أما إذا قال عليك أو عليكم السلام, if the person is to use a singular or he puts these words before the word salam, so he initiates salam by saying alayki salam, alayka salam, alaykum salam, alaykum salam, بغير واو. Maybe when responding, he responds without the waw. فقطع الإمام أبو الحسن الواحدي بأنه سلام يتحتب على المخاطب مخاطب به الجواب. So he mentions that Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Wahidi, he asserts with absolute conviction that such a greeting still qualifies as salam and therefore it demands a reply. That means, it's wajib to reply. So there's a few things where to do it first is sunnah, but then on the other person it becomes wajib. So this here it's and also the person doing a sunnah gets more reward than a person doing the wajib. So yeah, when a person's say it's like a quiz, you can quiz a person, and it's put in poetic form as well, but I don't want to get involved in that. Nevertheless, one of them is salam, that the person who makes salam first is practicing on a sunnah. What's the ruling of making a salam? It is sunnah. But then to reply to the salam, it is wajib. But who gets more reward? The person practicing on the sunnah gets more reward than a person practicing on the wajib. So he says that it's wajib upon the person who hears a salam with those kind of wording to still respond. وَإِن كَانَ قَدْ قَلَبَ اللَّفْظَ الْمُعْتَادِ, even though he deviated from the conventional wording, he changed the wording around. وَهَذَا الَّذِي قَالَهُ الْوَاحِدِ هُوَ الظَّاهِرِ. So then Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, he comments and he say that that's what Alama Abu al-Hasan al-Wahidi is saying. This is the apparent ruling, that this is what the ruling seemed to be. This is in Al-Adhkar on page 249. And then he mentions that Imam al-Haramain وقد جزم أيضا Imam al-Haramain به, Imam al-Haramain Alama Juwayni rahmallah, he also asserted that this is the ruling, and فيجب فيه الجواب, and therefore it's still compulsory to give to respond to such a salam because it is considered as salam. So it retains the essential nature of salam. But then Imam Nawawi rahmallah then throws out one scenario or like food for thought. He said, ويحتمل أن يقال, but probably you could also argue and say في كونه سلام وجهان كالوجهين, that maybe it could be considered as salam or maybe it might not be considered as salam, just depending on how you look at it. For example, let's look at it on coming out of prayer. So لأصحابهما sorry لأصحابنا فيما إذا قال في تحلله من الصلاة عليكم السلام هل يحصل به التحلل أم لا؟ الأصح أنه يحصل. That now here he's talking from the Shafi'i perspective, that when coming out of prayer, so at the end of salah, the person says alaykum salam. So imagine you're performing salah behind the imam, and then you come up in the last sitting, and you're sitting and you're waiting now for the imam to say the salam, and you already completed with the tashahud, you recited the durud, you recited the dua after the durud, you're making your own du'as, and you're waiting, and you think that any moment the imam is going to say assalamu alaikum, and suddenly you hear alaikum assalam. So now what's the ruling? Is the salah over? So he mentions that there are Shafi'i scholars who are of the view that no, salah it is not terminated. You need to say assalamu alaikum. But then others have said, and he makes tasheeh of that view, that that the salah it has terminated. So those scholars who said salah has not terminated, probably based on their view, this might not be considered as a salam. But nevertheless, when a person says like this here, alayk salam, the preferred view, like he quoted from Alama Wahidi and Imam al-Haramain, and all of those who say that you come out of salah, it will be that it is considered as a salam, and therefore responding to such a salam is compulsory. So nevertheless, he will tell his mother, alayka salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh ya ummatah. So you would use these kind of words of affection in public, because here there's a person with him, and yet he's still saying ya ummatah. And she would tell him then wa alayka salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and then he would still make dua for her, rahimakillah rabbaytini saghira, so making this dua, and she would also then respond to him, and she would express her gratitude and tell him fajazakallahu khairan wa radiya anka kama barartani kabira. Then here one of the narrators of the hadith, Abu Muhammad Moosa ibn Yaqub, he then mentioned that كان اسمه Abu Huraira, that the name of Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu was Abdullah ibn Amr. So this narration, you will only and only get it here in Adab al-Mufrad. So to get the muttasil sanad, you have to be present here. There's only one way to get a muttasil sanad for this particular narration all the way to Imam Bukhari, and that is through Adab al-Mufrad, because only and only Imam Bukhari rahmallah quoted this with this wording and this sanad. It's only Imam Bukhari who quoted it here in Adab al-Mufrad. So all of you who are present here, alhamdulillah, you got a fully linked chain to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam for this particular narration. Even if you studied other books of hadith, you wouldn't have got a fully linked chain, because this narration only appears here in Adab al-Mufrad. It doesn't appear in any other book. And the status of this narration is Hasan. So the mother of Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu attested to the fact that Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu was obedient. So I'll ask a question. You don't have to answer here, of course, but like food for thought. I'm mentioning food for thought the second time. Maybe I'm hungry, but we're not fasting now. Nevertheless, my thoughts are hungry. So a food for thought here is that we need to now consider how many of us will our mothers say that we were obedient. Like, so don't answer here. You must answer in your mind. Do you think that your mother would say that you are obedient? And if we think that our mothers will not say that we are obedient, then let us make intention that from now we're going to love such that like how Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhu, his mother could thank him. That generally it's good that you get thankful letters from your kids, especially when they're very young. They they learn to write, then they write for you all that letters, and they draw for you jazakallah khairan and thankful letters in it. But your parent, for your mother to be thankful to you, so that should be our goal. So you all make intention, inshallah. See the sunnah of tashkil. So make intention. May Allah Ta'ala make it easy for all of you who make intention to love update. So who makes intention to be obedient to their mother to such a level that their mother has no option but to attest that to attest, and if your mother is bad to you, then to confess and to admit that you are obedient to her, and to also thank you for it and make dua for you. So make dua, make intention. I mean, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy. Once you make the intention, Allah ta'ala makes it easy. This here is the sunnah of tashkil. If you make intention, put your name forward, then the divine nusrat of Allah ta'ala comes, make a dua, and then the dua goes to the arsh, and Allah ta'ala then grants hidayah. So in الدر المنضد وقد بر أبو هريرة رضي الله عنه أمه حقا وأظهر ذلك بلسانه غير ما مر. That Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu truly honored his mother and openly وأظهر. So أظهر, what's the meaning of أظهر? Publicly. He publicly expressed it, openly expressed this with his tongue on multiple occasions. Now coming to the name of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. So here in Adab al-Mufrad you can see that his name was Abdullah ibn Amr. So technically I don't have to explain this because we explained it in detail on Laylatul Qadr 3 years back. Can you remember? So those of you who were there, who of you was present in that lesson when we spoke about Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu? Subhanallah, what a lesson that was. And it was, that night definitely was Laylatul Qadr. So on Laylatul Qadr 3 Ramadans back, alhamdulillah, we had the opportunity of speaking about Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, and we mentioned about his name. So now, not to go into so much detail, but just for the benefit of those of you who are not there. So here it's being quoted as Abdullah ibn Amr, here in Adab al-Mufrad. Now you know Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, he wrote another book, At-Tarikh al-Kabir. Do you know that? So At-Tarikh al-Kabir, now something just to mention in passing, we want to go through the narrations, but you know Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, Mullah Fazlur Rahman would say that Imam Bukhari also, he would have this here, that it's called Hadas, Ha, Dal, Sin. It's trying to go quickly through the narrations, but then your mind goes to another point and to another point. So here, with regards to this kitab, At-Tarikh al-Kabir, you know Imam Bukhari rahimahullah, when he was a baby, he lost his eyesight, isn't it? When he was a baby, he lost his eyesight. Then his mother made dua for him, and his mother made dua that his eyesight must be restored. The power of a mother's dua, and this here links in well with this whole discussion about the rights of parents. This is to show you the power of a mother's dua. The power of his mother's dua is that he wrote Tarikh al-Kabir using the light of the moon. So that means on a dark night, he would write Tarikh al-Kabir, meaning that his eyesight improved to such an extent that even on a dark night, he was able to write. Can you see how great the dua of the mother is? That he lost his eyesight, he couldn't see, and then because his mother made dua, that dua became such that his eyesight became better than the eyesight of other people. He could write a full an entire kitab just using the moonlight as his lamp. So if you go to Medina Munawwara, you know there's that masjid of Imam Bukhari rahimahullah. If you go, you can ask anyone, they'll show it to you. There's a masjid there, it's very close, actually right opposite Masjid al-Nabawi. Make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes us, may Allah ta'ala take you over and over to Medina Munawwara, to Makkah al-Mukarramah. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take us and grant us the ability of fulfilling the huquq of Medina in Makkah, that when we go there, then our ziyarah becomes hujjatul lana and not hujjatun alayna. That so we have one ustad, when people ask him for advice when they go in for Umrah, then the one advice he gives them, saying that always remember that yes, good actions are multiplied, and we all say that you read Salah in Masjid al-Haram 100,000 times, it's multiplied. But remember also, bad actions are also multiplied. That you went into the palace of the king and you didn't follow etiquette, you know, things which are permissible anywhere else in public also, but it's not permissible in the house of the king. How dare you come to Mecca and you swear and you vulgar and you lose your cool? So may Allah Ta'ala make it such that we are blessed to go. If a person can't respect those places in the Hanafi madhab, and I don't want to go through all the references because this is not our topic right now, but there's so many books in the Hanafi madhab which mentions that it is makruh to migrate to Medina Munawwara. Now you might get the shock of your life. That each and every one of us want to go Medina Munawwara. What do you mean it's makruh to go there? So they're saying the interpretation is that for a person who goes there and he's not going to fulfill the hukuk of those places. And that is why many ulama also suggest that when you go, try not to go too long, because sometimes you go too long, first 2-3 days you're in the josh and you're respecting the place. After that you get used to it, and then you start to disrespect the place. Of course, there's no general ruling here. You make mashwara with your asatida and with your sheikh and in your personal circumstances, then they will advise you. And that is why we must make mashwara on that also. Everything we make mashwara, whether we must go for umrah or not, whether we must go in jamaat or not. So everything, and then you'll see the barakat, and then you'll see how you'll benefit. So, sorry, from where to where. Nevertheless, coming, so I was just mentioning about Tarikh al-Kabir, another book of Imam Bukhari, rahmallah. So Imam Bukhari, in that book, now we have the best print of that book. In the best print of Tarikh al-Kabir, there it is typed from the same narrator, Moosa ibn Yaqub, Ismu Abu Huraira Abdu Amrin. That is how it's typed in the best edition, and there's no footnote. They don't mention anything of the other manuscripts, etc. But in one of the older editions of Tarikh al-Kabir, the old Hyderabadi edition, Dairatul Ma'arif edition, there it is typed as Abdullah ibn Amr. So although that's an older print, but it seems to be more correct because it corresponds with what comes here in Adab al-Mufrad. Now there are so many different names presented for Abu Huraira radiyallahu anhum. For example, Khalifa ibn Khayyat, he said Abu Huraira ismuhu Umayr ibn Amir. Can you see? Completely different, isn't it? Here they're mentioning Abdullah ibn Amr. He's mentioning Umayr ibn Amir. Then he said, others have said that his name is Sikin ibn Wathqa. Can you see what a huge difference? A completely different name for Abu Huraira radiyallahu anh, and completely different name for his father. But then he mentions that we call Abdu Amrin. So now this maybe means that what comes in the best editions of Tarikh al-Kabir is more correct. That some have said that his name is Abdu Amrin, and then others have said that his name is Abdullah ibn Amir. So can you see the difference? That Abdu Amrin and Abdullah ibn Amir. So then maybe what's mentioned here in what's mentioned here in Adab al-Mufrad, maybe this is not accurate. So maybe it's supposed to be Abdullah ibn Amir. You understand the whole difference here? That you have multiple prints of Tarikh al-Kabir of Imam Bukhari rahmallah. Tarikh al-Kabir is another kitab. And then you have Adab al-Mufrad, which is also a kitab. In the best edition of Tarikh Kabir, there it is typed out. So the best edition, you're asking here what's the best edition? It is the An-Nashir al-Mutamayyiz edition. It was published recently, I think about maybe 5-6 years ago, 2019. Around that time it was published, and they used many manuscripts for the kitab. And yet I think they used 8 different manuscripts, and also they made muqabala with the riwayah of Ibn Faris, Ad-Dalal, etc. Basically a very authentic copy. So there it's typed as Abdullah Abdu Amr. So instead of Abdullah ibn Amr, his name is typed as Abdu Amr. And so that's another name which has been presented. So I don't know if you appreciate going in all that nitty-gritty and all that, but so you see, before the dars, make dua that Allah guide us on what's beneficial to be said. And I do take note that many of you are not even alims or animas, but nevertheless, I hope it's beneficial, inshallah. Then others have said that his name is Barir ibn sorry, I forget the father's name. Usayraqa, something like that. Barir ibn Usayraqa. So some mentioned that. Can you see how many different names are being presented? In total, there are between 30 to 35 different views regarding his name. So Allama Suyuti rahmallah, he quoted from Imam Nawawi rahmallah, وَخُطُلِفَ فِي اسْمِهِ وَاسْمَ أَبِيهِ عَلَى نَحْوِ 30 قَوْلًا. That there are there are around 30 different names which have been presented. And in Ad-Durr al-Munaddad, it's mentioned وَاخْتُلِفَ فِي اسْمِهِ عَلَى 35 قَوْلًا. 35 different names. But now what's the preferred name? So Imam Nawawi rahmallah said, أَصَحُهَا Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhar. That what is the most authentic name and the more correct name? It's Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhar. And this year, it's also mentioned in الدر المنضد أصحها ما ذكره النووي بقول عبد الرحمن. So the preferred view, Yahya ibn Ma'in in his Tarikh in volume 1 on page 152, he also said واسمه عبد الرحمن ibn Sakhar. So we're not having imtihan, but assuming if you are having imtihan, if you had to ask you what's the name of Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu, what would you have responded? So if you responded Abdullah ibn Amr, it would have been incorrect. Why? Because we don't know now what's correct here between the copies of Tarikh al-Kabir and the copy of Adab al-Mufrad. So the correct answer for you to write would have been Abdurrahman ibn al-Sakhar. That is the correct answer. So then the next chapter, so let's just go through this chapter heading little bit, and then we'll see how the timing is and whether we do get a chance to go through the hadith. So this chapter here, Babu Uquq al-Walidain, the chapter on disobedience to parents. So make dua also now that we get barakah in our time, subhanallah, that we'll have to see now after a few days how it goes. You know, before Ramadan, I was thinking that maybe we'll do about 40, 45 narrations, because how this course was advertised, it was advertised as reading and translation, but here we're getting caught up in so many other explanations. So maybe after a few days we'll have to see. Maybe we don't we switch off all the comments and we just then go through the hadith, or maybe we'll make mashwara, maybe with the admin of SiblingsOfIlm, maybe with yourselves, and then see whether it's beneficial to go like this here, slow, and maybe continue next Ramadan, or maybe just then rush through and complete what was advertised. That means we complete the entire kitab. So we hand it over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you'll all have a rada bil qada, isn't? So we hand it over to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides. So nevertheless, so all this digressing also. Babu uquq al-walidain. Now what constitutes uquq? So let me mention about 6-7 different views. The first is that Alama ibn Daqiq al-Eid, he said that أن ضبط الواجب من الطاعة لهما والمحرم من العقوق لهما فيه عسر. That we don't really know what constitutes obedience and what constitutes disobedience. So this here is the first, that we don't know. Now, if we don't know, then how are we going to practice upon it? So now we will have to study all the different places, and we'll have to see now what is going to be considered as disobedience and what is going to be considered as obedience. And then he says, وَرُتَبُ الْعُقُوقِ مُخْتَلِفَةً. Remember, this is Alama ibn Daqiq al-Eid. His if I start to speak about him, subhanallah, one of the very, very great scholars of Islam, and yet he is the one who is mentioning this here. Some scholars have said that after Imam Bayhaqi, no one understood the Shafi'i madhab as good as him. So such a great scholar we're talking about. And he's saying that it's difficult to explain what constitutes obedience and what constitutes disobedience. So this is the first, that it's difficult, and probably we'll have to look at uruf or something of that sort. But nevertheless, he then explains also that, okay, if it is difficult, then he quotes from his teacher, Izzuddin ibn Abdul Salam. He said, وَقَدْ نَصَّ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامُ عَلَى أَنَّ عُقُوقَ الْوَالِدَيْنِ مِنَ الْكَبَائِرِ مع الخلاف في رتب العقوق. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam has clearly defined and stipulated, explicitly stated, that disobedience to one's parents is amongst the major sins, although there is a difference of opinion regarding the varying degrees of disobedience. So then Izzuddin ibn Abdul Salam, he said, وَلَمْ أَقِفْ فِي عقوق الوالدين ولا فيما يختصان به من الحقوق على ضابط اعتمد عليه. So he's saying that he did not come across a definitive he did not come across a definitive criteria for عقوق الوالدين. He did, like, what constitutes عقوق الوالدين. فإن ما يحرم في حق الأجانب فهو حرام في حقهما. So he's saying that to understand what's going to constitute uququl walidain, just look, whatever is considered as disrespectful to others will be considered as disrespectful to one's parents. So you understand? So that's the next view. Whatever is considered as disrespectful to others will be considered as disrespectful to one's parents. So That's now what Ibn Daqiq al-Eid quoted from his teacher. Then Alama Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, he said that if there's no comprehensive definition of what constitutes uquq, then we should either look at the different scenarios that scholars have mentioned in their works and then make qiyas on that. So when you go through the books of fiqh, you will find that there's different scenarios which are mentioned. So you go through those different scenarios. So that's the one. Or he's saying the other is that you just look at what you look at the broader definition of kaba'ir. So in the broader definition of kaba'ir, you look at you have to weigh the pros and cons. So the benefits and the harms, and that is what how you will understand what is uquq. So he says, والفقهاء قد ذكروا صورا جزئية وتكلموا فيها منثورة لا يحصل منها ضابط كلي، فليس يبعد أن يسلك في ذلك ما أشرنا إليه في الكبائر، وهو أن تقاس المصالح في طرف الثبوت بالمصالح التي وجبت لأجلها. So basically you look at the benefit and the harm, and from there you can try to determine whether this will be whether this will be considered as obedience to one's parents, or whether this will be considered as disobedience to one's parents. So that's the next view. Then the view which comes after that is whatever inconvenience your parents, that is considered as uquq. So this is what Alama ibn Salah rahimahullah mentioned in his fatawa. So Alama ibn Salah said, وَأَمَّا أَنَّ الْعُقُوقِ مَا هُوَ فَإِنَّا قَائِلُونَ فِيهِ الْعُقُوقُ الْمُحَرَّمُ كل فعل يتأذى به الوالد أو نحوه تأذيا ليس بالهين مع كونه ليس من الأفعال الواجبة. So what is considered as uquq to one's parents? It is anything which causes a parent some kind of distress, as long as it's not in an obligatory duty. So it's not something which is compulsory. So that's the next definition. The definition after that of what considered as uquq, that if you don't obey them in something which is permissible. So for example, they tell you, go bring me a glass of water, and you don't go and bring them the glass of water, then that is considered as uquq. So anything that is permissible. وربما قيل طاعة الوالدين واجبة في كل ما ليس بمعصية ومخالفة أمرهما في كل ذلك عقوق. So some have stated that obedience to parents is obligatory in all matters that do not involve sin, and that disobeying them in such matters constitute uquq. And he said, وَقَدْ أَوْجَبَ كَثِيرٌ مِّنَ الْعُلَمَاءِ طَاعَةَ مَا فِي الشُّبُهَاتِ. Many ulama have even ruled that you have to obey them in cases of shubuhat. So you can see to that extent. Then the next definition, so just going quickly through all of these definitions, and then if there's time, I'll come to the questions here. So the next definition is not being kind to them and not obeying them. That is the meaning of uquq. So this here is mentioned by Alama ibn al-Mulaqqin. So Alama ibn al-Mulaqqin, Hafiz ibn Hajar rahmallah, in Fath al-Bari, he took a lot from Alama ibn al-Mulaqqin. To know the sources of authors, this is another whole discussion, and it helps a lot that knowing the sources of authors helps a lot, because then you can go back and see, especially that you remember how we mentioned that anyone can make a mistake. So especially when a scholar makes a mistake. And you must remember one point also when you're reading through all of these kitabs, that many of these scholars, they would write from memory. So they wouldn't make research before writing. And that is why you'll find that when you're going through many of these classical books, so outwardly it might seem that it is a defect, isn't it? You think that how can a scholar make a mistake like this? And when you go through many books, you look at the commentaries of the books, or you're studying it under a sheikh, and then they tell you, yeah, there's a mistake, there's a mistake. So outwardly it seems as a defect, that how can such a great scholar, he knew so much, he would know better. Others who are less competent than him knew about this point. How did he make the mistake? But then you understand that he would make, they would write from memory. And because they would be writing from memory, so they wouldn't be doing research, and they would just be writing like that. So that is how many times you find mistakes. So that is why studying the sources of authors becomes so important to know that when the author was writing this kitab, then which books he was referring to. Sorry, digressing again. So nevertheless, Alama ibn al-Mulaqqin, rahmallah, he said, sorry, he mentioned in Al-I'lam بفوائد عمدة الأحكام in volume 4 on page 36, العقوق عدم البر والإحسان إلى الوالدين. That what is uquq? It is disobedience and not being kind to your parents. So what number is that? Are any of you making notes? Okay, I'm only mentioning Ibn al-Mulaqqin's now. That it's al-uquq adamul birr wal ihsan. So that's the fifth or the sixth or the seventh. I don't even know how much it is. Nevertheless, you can make it in numbers, and whatever numbers you make in, then yeah, whatever you reach up to. So then another scholar to quote from is Abu Talib al-Makki. So Abu Talib al-Makki, he said, وتفسير العقوق جملة أي يقسم عليه في حق فلا يبر قسمهما. That what is the meaning of عقوق? So it has multiple dimensions and different interpretations. The one is that they make a promise on something, they like insist on something, they like harping on you, telling you, do this, don't forget to do this. They are literally telling you so much to do it, they're insisting on you to do it, and then you don't do it. So then it is considered as uquq. That's the first. The second is وَأَن يَسْأَلَهُ فِي حَاجَةٍ فَلَا يُعْطِيهِمَا. They ask you for something, but you do not give it to them. So something they're in need of, and you don't give it to them. That's the second meaning. The third meaning, وَأَن يَأْمَنَاهُ فَيَخُونُهُمَا. They trust you with something, and then you betray their trust. They say, we're going for a holiday. Well, you look after the shop for a few days, and you say, yeah. And then instead of opening the shop at 8 o'clock, you're sleeping and you only open the shop at 9:30. So they trusted you, but you betrayed their trust. So then that is considered as uquq. Then the next meaning is وَأَن يَجُوعَ فَيَشْبَعُ فَلَا تُطْعِمْهُمَا. That you let them go to bed hungry and you eat to your fill. So this here now it's the literal meaning, but you take the broader meaning. That you're living a lavish lifestyle, you're living in so much comfort, and you make them live under constraints, and you make them live in a small council house or house which is provided by the government, and a very small shelter where the house is not even so comfortable, and you living in a big mansion. So that's the next meaning. وَأَن يَسْتَبَّاهُ فَيَضْرِبُهُمَا. That they maybe shout you, and you go to the extent of hitting them. So all of that is considered as so it's all the says from Abu Talib al-Makki. So if you're making notes, then you can put whatever number you are, A, B, C, D. And then the next meaning is by Wahb ibn Munabbih. He mentions that from the Torah, أصل البر بالوالدين في التوراة أن تقي مالهما بمالك. That what is so now this is the opposite here. That what is considered as obedience and being dutiful to your parents, you protect their wealth like how you would protect your own wealth. So you want to drive your father's car, you drive your father's car just like how you would drive your own car. You look after their things just like how you would look after your own things. وَتُطْعِمْهُمَا مِنْ مَالِكَ. You spend on them from your wealth. So may Allah Ta'ala protect us. It should not be that now we're already over the age of 20 and we're still living off our parents. That they are already now reaching the age of retirement, but they must still be paying for our needs, or they must still be taking care of our expenses. No, you get onto your own 2 feet, and then you must then pay for their expenses. So let them retire now, the end of their lives, let them spend time with their grandchildren, let them have an easy life, and you pay for their expenses. وأصل العقوق أن تقي مالك بمالهما وتوفر مالك وتأكل مالهما. So he mentions, so now if that is considered as bir, then what is considered as uquq? So uquq is defined as protecting your wealth at the expense of their wealth. So you understand that by spending their wealth, you want to protect your wealth. And then you hoard your own resources whilst you consume theirs. So did you get all the meanings of uquq? Like, we're just trying to rush here. I hope that it's still beneficial and you're able to capture all the points. So having said that, Imam Ibn Abil Izz, he said, وَلَا يَجِبُ عَلَى الْوَلَدِ طَاعَةُ مَا فِي كُلِّ مَا يَأْمُرَانِ بِهِ. That always remember this one principle also, that whilst we are stressing and whilst we are emphasizing that you need to obey your parents and you should not disobey them, there are boundaries in place and there are limits. At the end, they are your parents, and yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions it in the same verse when he mentions about Tawheed, and is prohibited in the same ahadith with the shirk. So it is very great. But remember, your parents are not deities, and therefore your parents are still human beings. So there are times when your parents could be wrong, and therefore, so you must actually write this reference down and remember this principle here. قواعد الأحكام في مصالح الأنام, volume 1, page 24. ولا يجب على الولد طاعتهما في كل ما يأمران به. That it is not obligatory for a child to obey his parents in every commandment. ولا في كل ما ينهيان عنه. And it is not necessary for him to stay away from everything that they prohibit him. باتفاق العلماء, according to the consensus of ulama. Can you see? That is why I told you write this reference down, because it's a point which you'll need, especially if you're an alim, if you're an alima, if you're doing a social work, if you're a mufti, then people will come and they'll mention a scenario. Then you must remember this principle, that وَلَا يَجِبُ عَلَى الْوَلَدِ طَاعَتُهُمَا فِي كُلِّ مَا يَأْمُرَانِ بِهِ وَلَا فِي كُلِّ مَا يَنْهَيَانِ عَنْهُ بِاتِّفَاقِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. So they repeated it before you asked for me to repeat it. It's in قواعد الأحكام في مصالح الأنام. So now with all these questions, now how are we going to sort all these questions out? That on the one hand, I don't want to ignore your questions. I really want to respond to all of your questions. And on the other hand, there's like so many questions. I told you that my WhatsApp also, there's so many that I can't answer them all. So how can we attend to all of these questions? So maybe, inshallah, we'll see, maybe make mashwara or something. And if we open the group, and maybe there's so many other senior ulama, then maybe if I don't get a chance to respond to everything, actually they will give better responses than me. They will even pull out my mistakes and mention my errors. So if we open up the group, and then on the group, then maybe you can ask. And then in that way, it's people from different time zones, and maybe you can mute it. So what do you all think about that? Otherwise, how are we going to attend to all of these questions? Yes, most definitely. Even if you're listening, if it's an online lesson, definitely that you just the sound waves in your house. So the sound waves in your house. Imagine if a person owns music in their house. Go ask any Raqi, any Amil, any person who deals in black magic. They'll tell you that it's so easy. So yes, maybe you follow those ulama, the minority opinion of those who say music is permissible. But you ask any Raqi, they'll tell you it's so simple for someone to make jadoo on you, to make black magic on you. Why? Because definitely the malaika ran away. So, but it's not live. You're owning a recording, isn't it? You go onto the YouTube and then you on a recording. So it's not live, but it airwaves in your house. So if the airwaves of music cause the malaika to run away, that anyone can then make a jadoo on you, and the evil jinn can so easily to get a VIP red carpet to come into your home, then do you think this is a live lesson? Do you think that the Mubarak words of the Prophet ﷺ are not so potent? That even the recordings of Quran, that many amils actually, I can't say all because I don't know all, but like lots and lots of amils, when they're giving you a treatment, if you got jadoo or if you got, they'll give you a recording to leave on in your home whole day. So if you go on Ruqya groups or on a WhatsApp group, if you study little Ruqya, any of you Ruqya practitioners here, and if you're going to answer, just beware, you're going to get lots of people messaging you. Because, once a person is known to to be a ghostbuster, they get a lot of people. So maybe you'll be shy to answer. So nevertheless, they give you recordings of the Quran to on in your house. And that recordings chase the jinn away. So if that's the power of the recordings, then most definitely, if you're attending a live lesson, the malaika are surrounding your house, and definitely there's benefit for you. Inshallah, some process must be made to attend to all of these questions, or maybe after Ramadan, maybe we'll try to work out some kind of a thing, especially if there's a mistake. Because now, yeah, I'm just talking off the cuff, whatever comes, and plus so late after a long day, also, you don't know what you're talking. Then if there's mistakes, some things which I mentioned in error, then please do correct it on the group. I'll really appreciate it, inshallah. And also, like maybe if I give you a reference and you go and you open a reference and you find that it's a wrong reference, then don't feel shy. You must then tell us that. So I'm asking you, I'm requesting you, and if you find any mistake in the dars, please do mention it. Don't think that it's respect, or don't think that like you don't want to, because I just told you that so when you just talk like that, talking now all the time, then sometimes you don't know what you just blurt out. Also, sometimes you don't not even concentrating on what you say. So I answered that, isn't? No, so alayka salam, if you read the letters which Sahaba wrote to others, etc., they also would write like that, alayka salam. And you can see Abu Hurairah radiyallahu anhu also. Okay, nevertheless, it's very difficult to now sift through all of this here. So I'd be open to checking the class notes after we complete them. I'd be happy to pass them on. Yes, so inshallah, if you're making notes, please do pass them on, because now that we're going into detail, so you see, one is what we plan, and then one is what Allah Ta'ala makes happen, isn't? I told you, we plan, what's the advertisement? And I'm actually now getting conflicting ideas about this whole thing, that we advertised it, so that we're going to complete Adab al-Mufrad, but we're going into detail. And if you're going into detail, we would like then to publish it. So we can, inshallah, have an English commentary. I don't know if there is any English commentary of Adab al-Mufrad. Do any of you know if there is an English commentary? So if you're making notes, then please do send them through. Inshallah, I'll be more than happy to go through, inshallah. And then if you message one time and I don't see your message, and message again and message again and I don't see it, then message again until I see it. And once I save your number, then inshallah I'll see your messages more often. But as long as your number is not saved, then it will be very, I might miss your message. But if you're making notes, I would want to see your notes. And if it's a mistake which I mentioned, then continue, send it until I see, inshallah. Also, there is one English commentary here. So, of course, now I didn't even know about the commentary, so I don't know if how authentic it is. But maybe I can check through that commentary, inshallah. So I'll also screenshot this so that I can get this commentary. Okay, Jazakumullah khairan. Please do make dua for us, and please do make us maaf if we said anything incorrectly. Jazakumullah khairan. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha